Yep. Hello and welcome to the Friday Fantasy Show from the Bottled Imp, exploring the realms of fantasy. My name is Ken Boyter and today we're going to be taking a quick look at Into the Woods. Yes, this was released in December 2014, and as it's December now, it's 3 years later. Just how well has this held out? Now, this has been a film that basically was in the making. It's 15 years in the making, and it's directed by Rob Marshall. And the reason why I say it's 15 years in the making is because the idea about this was actually muted, is that the word? Muted, 15 years ago, and there were several studios that unsuccessfully attempts were made to make it. So there must have been problems initially about how you actually film this. And it is based on a Broadway musical of the same name. And so, again, it's that adapting one format into another. So, for example, a book into a radio play or a book into a film or whatever. So how do you take and I'm assuming, I haven't done the research on this, Broadway musical, I'm assuming it was fairly successful. How do you adapt?
Massively successful.
Oh, Julian says it, but Julian's heard of it. Yay!
I've heard of it. It's massively successful.
I hadn't heard of it. But yeah, so it was massively successful then. So how do you adapt a massively successful Broadway theatrical musical into a film? Oh, well, let's find out. Yeah, Disney? Yeah? Into the Woods, yes. What's the setup? What's the premise? Well, the premise is they have taken several classic fairy tale stories, Brother Grimm's fairy tale stories, and they have interwoven them into one story. So they've taken Little Red Riding Hood, they've taken Cinderella, they've taken Jack and the Beanstalk, and they've taken Rapunzel, and they have knitted it all in together to make one overarching story. And the thing that actually knits it all together is this wood, this huge kind of dark wood. It's magical, it's dark, it's all of those things that you would expect from a fairy tale. But I'm not going to say too much more about each story and how they actually do it, because I don't really want to give too many spoilers away. But there is a fifth story as well about a baker and his wife, and they want a child. They want to start a family. So that is the sort of glue that sticks all these previous well-known and well-loved stories together. So where to begin? I'm just going to say straight away, I thought this film was terrible. I was so disappointed because I was really looking forward to this. It had, for me, all of the things that I like. I do like all those stories. Obviously, they're classics. And stories don't last too long, especially, over 100 years, unless they're good stories, unless they're gripping and exciting. So I was very confused how they've taken all these much-loved stories and made them bland and made them boring and made them no sense whatsoever. So and the thing is, I do go in everything with an open mind, and with this, I don't think I've ever experienced this where I have actually hated a film after the first word. Literally, we were, 2 seconds into the film, and bosh, it just all kicked off in a very sorry way. Yes, it's a musical. Now, those of you that have watched some of my reviews before, I'm not a massive fan of musicals, but I still go in open-minded. And there have been some great musicals, and we'll get into those in a minute. And it's not like I don't like musicals. It's just that there are just certain musicals that I just don't like. So again, like anything, I'm not just going to love everything that's fantasy just because it's fantasy. Certain things have to still be there in order for it to work for me, and sadly, it was all lacking in this film. Basically after the first word, I think the first word spoken, and then boom, we're into a song, and that's fine, that's great, cool, hook us in. But this song was so unoriginal. It was so fast as well. I think they were scared that if we didn't grab your attention, then you wouldn't, you'd get bored and you'd go off and get a hot dog while you're watching it. It was just boom, 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 boom. And what they decided to do was to introduce all of the characters, most of them, I'd say probably 95% of the characters in the whole film, in one go in this first story, so in the first song, so you're getting to know all of the characters, and there's probably about, I don't know, anywhere from 8 to 10 sort of main characters, because it's a big ensemble cast, and you get to introduce also the 5 plot strands that are whipping around in this story, all within the space of, you know, what seemed like 20 minutes. This song just went on and on and on and on, and it was repetitive, and it just, honestly, and it's like, whoa, okay, what's just happened there? Right, and I didn't really get to know any of the characters, even though they were dancing away and singing and, you know, all of that, and doing their best. They were, you know, trying to grab your attention, trying to make the story interesting, trying to make all of their plots interesting, trying to introduce all those characters, and I didn't know a thing about any of them. Well, I kind of did, but you kind of didn't really care because I didn't get to know them, and that, to me, was the problem with it. Well, that's one of the problem with it. I didn't care. I just sat there. It was like a train had hit me in the face, and I just thought, well, hang on, the characters, who are you, and what are you doing, and why do you care, and what's your motivation there, and why are you doing that? And I don't really get it. It could just be me. It could just be me. But this is the impression I kind of, you know, that was my 20-minute introduction to it. The themes. Normally I look for themes within things because you want something of substance. You don't want it just to be a series of action, you know, sort of set pieces, because otherwise you're not emotionally invested as a viewer. The themes, well, I couldn't really see many, and I didn't really care for any if they were there because I wasn't invested in the characters. And the only one that really stood out was it was wishes and wants. And the first 20 minutes of this, it seemed like 20 minutes, it might not be, it might be shorter, but it seemed to go on and on and on. This opening song, it was all about wishes and wants, and it seemed all very selfish, and, you know, that's fine, but not every single character. You know, you can have selfish characters, but not every single character. So that seemed to be the main theme, that everyone wanted and desired stuff. So, and if I was going to extrapolate that more, is that a reflection of a capitalist society? You know, like the desire, consuming, I must have and want, rather than, actually, what can I give? What can I enjoy? What can I give back to the community? I know that sounds a bit naff, but it just seemed a little bit heavy-handed. Now, as I say, I'm not a massive fan of musicals, but there have been some great musicals that I've loved. West Side Story, for example, Bugsy Malone, The Jungle Book, La La Land, that came out recently in the last 2 years, I think it was. Absolutely love La La Land, and they were singing and dancing, and, you know, and they're up on the cars, and again, I don't want to give any plot spoilers about that, but it was a beautiful musical. It had that, you know, nostalgic feeling of the sort of classic musicals. There's some fantastic musicals out there that I personally love. Disney has released classic musicals. You've got The Jungle Book, as I mentioned. You've got Bedknobs and Broomsticks. You've got The Lion King. You've got Mary Poppins. You've got Beauty and the Beast. They've got even more great musicals that you sing along, that you remember the songs. And that, to me, was the biggest disappointment, because in a musical, what should be the main thing? It's a musical. The clue is there, isn't it? It's the music, it's the songs. You want to leave the cinema or wherever you're watching it, you want to be singing, you want to be humming those songs, you want to be, you know, enthralled by them, you want to be lifted by them, you want that magical feeling you have. You want to be there, you want to be singing along. And these ones, you just can't. They all seem very similar to each other, let alone similar to other kind of bad songs that I've heard in musicals. And I was trying to work it out what was wrong with it. And I think it's to do with they kind of use the songs as exposition. So they were sort of describing what you were seeing. So it's like, yes, I'm going to be lifting up a cup of tea now and I'm going to be drinking it, and you want a cup of tea, and would you like a cup of tea, and I'll have a cup of tea. And it was all just basically talking to music. There didn't seem to be any kind of songs in it. There was maybe one or two that what I would consider a proper song, where you could really get into it and really enjoy it. So I probably enjoyed 2 of the songs out of the numerous songs. It's 2 hours long. It's 2 hours. I was 40 minutes into this thing and went, right, what? And I thought I was, you know, like, it felt longer, seriously. The whole plot, all of the strands wrap up 1 hour, 15 minutes in, and you think, great, this is the ending, fantastic. No, what? It then carried on. It just went on and on. I was like, hang on, no, but we've all wrapped everything up. And then there was another story sort of planted on right at the end. 45 minutes of this. 45 minutes. I was like, what is going on? Now, I kind of thought, well, mate, this feels like there's 2 films here. Why didn't they just start with the end bit and do like an extended version, like 45 minutes, or wrap it up after, or add another 15 minutes of kind of more songs or whatever to make it an 1.5-hour film. But 2 hours long, it didn't warrant it. So for me, the songs let it down, because that's what you want from a musical, don't you? The characters were flat. They were flat. I didn't care about them. There was no, talk about one-dimensional. There was no dimensions to them. And there was a mishmash of accents. Now, I know that shouldn't really bother, but it kind of does. It was somewhere American, somewhere UK English, somewhere, even in the same family, you kind of had, and they were, I'm assuming they were brought up in the same household. Some were, a mother and daughters, but one was American and the daughter was English. So it's like, hang on, how did that happen? And yes, I know it's kind of Into the Woods, it's a magical realm where I guess anything happens, but it just seemed to jar, it just seemed to clash. And some had, Eastern European accents, so it was all a bit all over the place, and the acting styles differed. I didn't really, some were very stagey and theatrical, which is fine, it's a musical, it's fine, but some were very gritty and real, and it just kind of clashed. And I was, and it's an all-star cast. You've got Johnny Depp in there, you've got Meryl Streep, you've got James Corden. The star of the show for me, and she wasn't in it a lot, but she stole the acting credits, and she could sing as well, was Tracey Ullman. Now, I'm not a massive fan of Tracey Ullman, and it was like, oh, well, cool, that's Tracey Ullman. I remember her, in the UK, she actually had a comedy career before she went over to the States and made it big. And I remember watching her as a kid and finding her pretty funny. But in the UK, we didn't see her show, so we kind of lost touch with what she was doing. And then, wow, I hadn't seen her since that time. And she turns up in there, and she steals the show. She's really believable. She was the only one that gave a performance that I really believed. And she played like this... hard, downtrodden, hard mother of Jack from Jack and the Beanstalk. And she played it brilliantly, and the singing was superb, and I believed her. And I think this was the problem. If you haven't got the good acting in there, the characterization, the 3-dimensional characters, when they do start singing, if you haven't got the believability of the characters, then why should I believe that they're going to start singing? Whereas with Tracey Ullman's character, the mother, when she started singing, I was there. I absolutely adored it. I loved it. I thought it was a brilliant performance by Tracey Ullman. So that was the standout performance, even though Meryl Streep was in it, and she plays a wicked witch, and she was very good. But again, I'm not sure she felt totally comfortable. I've seen her give much better performances. So I don't know what happened there with the actors. They didn't sparkle. I don't know if they believed in the project themselves. And the storyline, wow, my God, this was a mess. It was all over the place. They seem to take the really classic 4 loved stories that are brilliant and then just show you all that they took out all the best bits of them and showed you kind of almost the behind the scenes bits. And that's fine if you want to do that. But make it interesting. Don't make it boring. I would much prefer if they just did a straight adaptation, or maybe just cross 2 of these stories, because it was too unwieldy. There was too much going on. And then you got their own overall arc with the baker and the wife. That's like a new story to hang it all together. It was too complicated. I'd rather they just took one of the stories and then did a really fantastic job of it. Let's do Little Red Riding Hood the musical. Fantastic. Or Little Red Riding Hood meets Jack and the Beanstalk. Let's mix that up a little bit. But, think about the story. Don't just give us a jumbled mess. And I think half of the problem is that Into the Woods, it was almost like they've got this concept about, how about they all meet in the wood, and that's the connecting thing. But then it becomes contrived, because how can we get Little Red Riding Hood into the wood? Well, that's obvious, because that's where she kind of lived, she goes. But then what about, Jack and the Beanstalk? Well, it doesn't really take place in Jack and the Beanstalk. So how do we get him in the wood? And then how do we get the other characters into the wood? And therefore it all just becomes too contrived. And as Mark Kermode, the god of film critics, in my opinion, he has a phrase that he just says, if there's no characterization and if you have no proper story and you don't care about it, it just becomes, and this is his way, he says, a bunch of stuff that happens. And unfortunately, this is what happens. It's like, this happens and this happens and this happens. And then towards the end, it just becomes nonsensical. Why are you doing that? Well, you know what? I don't care. And that, unfortunately, is what this film is about. So, overall, you can probably tell, I thought this film was terrible. It just felt like a bad panto that had gone wrong. And it was almost like it was a spoof musical. It's like, what's a musical having it? What's a panto having it? Let's just tick all the boxes, but do them really badly. So my big question ultimately is why? Why would you do this? Why would you want to do it? Why would you take 5 or 4 classic stories and then ruin them? Why not give us one of the stories that is really, and do a really cool, adaptation? It lacked charm. It lacked magical qualities. They didn't build anything up. The characters were kind of too modern. There was a bit of modern kind of lingo going on in the way they move sometimes, and there was sort of slang, and it just didn't gel. There was a lack of wit in it. There was a lack of characterization. There was a lack of a good script. Believable characters. It's not much to ask, is it? So basically everything about it I hated, apart from when it finished. That was good, because then I could watch something else. But maybe it's just me, because there was a $50 million budget, and you could see where they went. The special effects were pretty good, but by then I didn't care. I didn't care if it was good or bad. The box office it took, though, worldwide was $213.1 million. So it was a success. So obviously I'm in the minority, but that's not going to stop me from having my opinion, because I think that's what you should do. You should, when you watch something or you read something or you hear something, it's going to tap into you personally, isn't it? And unfortunately, Into the Woods, I'd rather get out of the woods. There you go. Huh. But what do I know? Into the Woods. Yeah? Yeah? There we go, Into the Woods. That's all I'm going to say. Thank you so much for watching, and remember we do have a Facebook group. Come join us, join the community. You can search for it, the Fellowship, the Bottled Imp Fellowship, search for that, and then click the join button and we'll add you in. And also please remember to subscribe. It all helps for the viewing figures. And if you know anybody else that's into fantasy films, books, reviews, writing, and we've got loads more stuff planned for next year because it's coming to the end of 2017, then please spread the word of the Bottled Imp. But until next time, remember to keep it unreal, especially if you go into the woods. You probably don't want to.